Okay, so let's finally talk about what makes this a price fighter tractor and the significance of the price fighter package and how it's been used before and it got used again. Desperate times call for desperate measures, and that's why this tractor was made. This isn't a tractor that they wanted to do, but it was a tractor that they needed to do. So the price fighter package is absolutely a product of the time it was manufactured, specifically 1986, 1987. 1986 was the depths of the 1980s farm crisis. And if you study the farm crisis at all, if you look at from the absolute height of the peak of demand for farm equipment to the absolute bottom, which was about 1986, I believe it shrunk by 2/3. Basically, John Deere had the capacity to supply all the equipment for the entire market and then some. So you're John Deere, you're not selling any farm equipment. What do? If something isn't selling, you lower the price, right? Well, that's kind of a fine line to walk, because if you just lower the price of your product, there's a few things that are probably negative. Obviously, your profit margin is smaller, but you also alienate your customer that has bought a new tractor. So let's say your customer had bought a 1984 4250 and went to trade it in on a 1986, and the cost of the 1986 is a third or a quarter less than what his 1984 cost. This guy's going to be pretty mad. One of the biggest selling points that John Deere's ever had is high resale value. So if you lower the price of the new one, you're lowering the resale value of the customer's tractor. So when this customer goes to trade, if his is worth less money, then that trade difference is going to have to go up. And at that point, the customer might start looking at another brand. The solution is a new model, the Price Fighter 4250. Now, what's unique about the Price Fighter program is they kept the numbers the same. So there's no way of looking just at a glance that, oh yeah, that's a price fighter. I mean, if you know the options, it should be, but just from a far away look, nope, looks the same. Now, John Deere did this before, 1969 with the 4000. The 4000 was a cheap 4020. And John Deere's not the only company. I have an International Harvester 856 Custom. Now, Deere isn't the only company to have done this in the past. I have an International Harvester 856 Custom, and that is a stripped-down version of an 856 Farmall. In the 856, it actually designates on the outside Custom. The 4250, like I said, doesn't say Price Fighter or even say it on the serial number. But things were getting pretty desperate in the farm equipment market, especially for Deere, because you had Case and International, Deutz Alice Chalmers with their mergers. They cheapened that inventory to sell it so that they could introduce new models. I just did that video with Greg Lapine a week ago, and he talked about the 94 series cases that he got them 50% off. Well, John Deere hadn't merged. John Deere wasn't introducing a whole new line of farm equipment, so they needed to sell a cheaper tractor. Now, John Deere didn't say, we can't sell tractors, so we have a cheap tractor. Now, Deere didn't just flat out say, we can't sell tractors, so here's a cheap tractor. What they said was it was a price-conscious customer, somebody that maybe had missed some trade cycles. Maybe they always wanted a John Deere but felt they were too expensive, or they had a low-spec competitive tractor. Now, for the people buying them, what a awesome deal. Same as the John Deere 4000. So think about this. I like my wife to be in a new vehicle. I don't want to have to worry about her when she'd be traveling to my in-laws and stuff and has all the kids. I'll drive my 2 old farm trucks, but I like to have her in a nicer vehicle. We don't buy the fancy one. We buy the base model, which I should say is kind of just above the fleet spec. It's nice. I mean, base models today are nicer than the fancy ones when I was a kid. So they're all nice, but we just go with the more basic spec. And if you look at the difference in her Suburban, say, versus a High Country or a Premier, you're talking over $20,000 difference. Now, do you really think it costs that much more money to have leather or to have different trim? I mean, they're all 4-wheel drive, a V8, air conditioning, all kinds of options, 20-inch rims. But GM wants you to buy the High Country or the Premier because the markup on that stuff is where all the margin is. So let me show you what makes a price fighter, and then think about that, what I'm saying about the Suburbans. It's the same thing with the tractor. First, all price fighter tractors are a quad range, period. Next, they have an analog tack and analog gauges. There's no Investigator 2 on a price fighter. Next, they have a mechanical seat. They cannot have a hydraulic hydro-cushioned seat. Their options were a cab with air conditioning with the mechanical seat and the regular gauges, or a 4-post ROPS. 1984 was the last year that you could get an open station 4250. When I say open station, I mean no ROPS, no canopy. So your options were cab or 4-post ROPS, but they were all, just analog tack, mechanical seat suspension, analog gauges. You could get 2-wheel drive or mechanical front, but if you wanted a cab, you could only get 2-wheel drive on a 4250. 4450, you could get MFWD. And I should add, the price fighter was only on the 40, 42, and 4450. The front tires on this were upgraded, same with the rears, but 38-inch rear wheel castings, 1016 fronts. The light-duty offset cast. You can't have heavy-duty offset cast with a price fighter. 2 remotes, category 2 3-point. Could not get lift assist. And on the rear wheels, no matter, you could get a long axle, but you could not get duals on this tractor from the factory. There were some field installed options, but the other options that were available for this tractor, you could get a hammer strap drawbar. You could get a weight bracket with front weights. You could just get a bracket. You could get a weight bracket with a few weights or a weight bracket with more weights. And you could get a block heater. So what tractor do you think John Deere made more money on? One that's loaded or this tractor? Of course, the loaded one, because your costs on so much of this are the same. The tires are the tires. The guy painting the tractors paid the same whether he's painting this one or a loaded one. The pension for the guy at the engine works that are putting the engine back together, well, it's the same. Just because he's working on a cheap tractor, it doesn't matter. So I'm going to write an article one of these days about this. Just putting it out there so in case anybody else has that idea. But if you pull up a corn chart from 1969, 68, 69, look at it. John Deere 4000. Look at a corn chart, 1986, 1987, 1985. And then if you look at one from about 2000, 2001, it seems there was another price-sensitive tractor that Deere was selling. So I was wrong in saying only 2%. It's like less than 7% of the production of 2-wheel drive 4250 quad ranges are like this tractor. So this tractor was cheaper new and worth just as much as the rest of the 4250s today. Don't buy the King Ranch. Buy the XL. You guys have a good one.